Hi, this is Donna and Kendrick with Widow, Wisdom, and Wealth. In today's episode, we are interviewing Harriet Stein, and she is a mindfulness coach. Now, in full disclosure, we've recorded this in the very first few days of 2026 with the intention of posting it as being a mindfulness resource for our widows and our listeners as a new year approach to remind yourself to just take these simple moments in life. But like so many other things in life, it got busy, right? We got distracted. And here we are at the end of the first quarter of the year. So many of those New Year's resolutions out the door. And I actually was like, I'm going to record a new intro for this podcast because it deserves it. Mindfulness, the definition, is paying attention without judgment. And so I want you to listen in to Harriet's words to how to use mindfulness if you're a beginner like myself or someone who's been fully practiced and needs a quick reminder of how it can just be at a red light, to just pay attention to where you are. Because perfect attendance, which is the title of Harriet's book, I'm going to read it from my post-it, is being present for life. That's really what it is. So listen, this is a quick one. You can do it on the way to drop the kids off or to go pick up some takeout. About 20-25 minutes. Listen to it on a higher speed if you need to. But it's just a quick reminder nestled in there for all our widows and widowers who are balancing careers and balancing kids to be able to do it with a little bit of deep breath and a little bit of ease and a little bit of appreciation for all that we are as the parents, the sole caregivers, the career people, and the humans on this earth. Enjoy. So let's talk to Harriet Stein. We're going to be talking today about mindfulness. Harriet, welcome to the podcast, Widow, Wisdom, and Wealth. How are you today?
I'm doing incredibly well. Thank you for inviting me here today, Donna.
And I'm so happy to be able to share your story with our listeners. So many of our listeners are widowers that have actually experienced a huge change in their life. And many of them are balancing that career as well as raising their kids. And the subject of mindfulness is something that has been so important to me since I myself was a widow years ago. One of my very good friends was a mindfulness coach. And I always just loved how she approached life, how she approached that balance at work. And I remember her saying, yeah, I go away for retreats sometimes for a whole week or 2 weeks, which opened my doors to finding out more. So I am
Mm.
inviting you to share your wisdom of mindfulness and how it can help our community. So before we start in, tell us who you are and Harriet's story.
Yeah, so, my name is Harriet Stein. I always say that if I was a tree, my innermost core is that of a nurse. So I had been a nurse for a really long time, and I transitioned from nursing into doing clinical research in pharma. And then on the side, while I was at Johnson and Johnson, I quietly asked my manager if I could teach some mindfulness to my colleagues. And at typical of a large company, they said, sure, just don't tell anyone. So
That's corporate.
we
Go
did it
ahead.
quietly, never part of my job description on the side. And I taught over 5,000 of my colleagues and had a weekly program there for almost a decade. So it was always on the side. I started my own company when I was there. And next month, it's going to be 15 years that I've had my own company and been doing this full time now for the last 8 years. So just, getting out there and teaching. I didn't want to do it on the side anymore. I wanted it to be my number one main focus.
I love it. So for someone who's listening that's like mindfulness, I heard of it. I thought it's just a woo word. Define mindfulness, how someone can use it in their corporate structure as well as their personal.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that out first and foremost, because I always say what mindfulness is not, right? You notice we're not dimming any lights, we're not lighting any candles, we're not chanting, there's nothing religious about this, we're not doing any of that. All mindfulness is, and if you remember nothing else from today's podcast, it's about paying attention. It is about paying attention moment by moment with non-judgment. And I always say it takes seconds for me to teach someone, not even minutes, seconds. And then it is a lifetime of practice.
So if you're going in, you're saying, I was here, I was in the corporate structure, and I'm teaching mindfulness to my colleagues. Set that up.
Mhm.
What would that look like?
Yeah, I would invite them a lot of times I'll say, like, how did you get to work today? And they'll be like, well, I drove, or I took a train, or I went from one room to another nowadays. And I was like, well, what do you remember? And they were like, well, I didn't remember anything. And, those same skills that move us from one room to another or one location to another, we can easily be on autopilot. We can drive down the street and not remember what we saw at all because we're so much in our minds and in our heads. And I think that is the reason why this is so imperative. And it's why I began teaching it in the corporate world, which I've been doing now for over 20 years, teaching it to corporate folks because they're incredibly stressed out. And it's a very quick and easy way to decrease your stress. Back in March of 2020, when everything shut down, I started working 7 days a week. And a CEO had asked me to create a global program for him for mindfulness for his employees. And I said to him, to the CEO, I said, when did you get the value of this? Like, when did you understand this? He's like, Harriet, when you came in and did that little session, the lunch and learn, where we all sat around and ate pizza. And he said, I realized then it gave me the space to think. And nowadays, it's not just CEOs and C-suite folks and leadership that need the space to think. We all need to have a practice in which we can quickly and easily find peace of mind.
Yep. And I love that you actually say the space to think. I remember being a young widow with three kids. They were 12, 11, and 8, and working and getting them to all of their sports and trying to deal with the grief of it and trying to deal with the finances of our home and settling all of the estates. And it was just so much. I just felt like I was always on the run to the point that even when it was time to go to bed, I couldn't shut my brain off. I couldn't get myself to sleep. And I couldn't stop even for a moment in that first probably year to 2 years to even think. I was just constantly in reaction. And I know so many widows and widowers do that. Sometimes it's to keep ourselves busy to avoid catching up with the grief type of thing and dealing with it. Different topic. But in these busy schedules, when you are a parent that has to work, whether it's your own
Mhm.
company or whether a corporate job, and you also have the kids on the side, what would you see as the value of mindfulness to help keep them going? And where would those, I would say, prime opportunities to keep yourself
Mhm.
there? I now know when they are,
Mhm.
but for someone who is not aware, it's when
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you, in the short time that we've been talking, which is literally minutes, my head is going in seven different directions because you've raised so many valuable points. I want to, so I just want to highlight these because you've said them so quickly and they have resonated so much in my heart. One is you said in the first 1 to 2 years.
Mhm.
And I think so many times, and as a nurse and as a person who's been teaching this for decades now, people very frequently think that when you have suffered a great loss, they give you 3 days off or 5 days off from work, or, I think the research shows it takes 3 to 5 years to deal with a great loss. And I always thought I was a very compassionate person up until I suffered my first great loss, which was when I was 35 and my 58-year-old mother went from diagnosis to dying of cancer in 4.5 months.
Mm.
And I honestly had never experienced the grief process up until then. And so, when you say about like you have to move through it, right? This is something that we carry with us. Did it take me 3 to 5 years? No. Honestly, I'm going to say that it took a decade. It honestly took that long for me to get through the entire grief process with my mom. And I think everybody does things differently. But during that time, like what you said, you're running a busy life. I was working. I had to pay a mortgage. Uh, you know, it's so involved that I remember driving to work. I love gospel music. I remember driving to work, listening to gospel music, crying, and then being at work the whole day, doing my job, laughing, running meetings, getting back in the car at the end of the day and crying driving home. Uh, and I think people frequently don't realize that, that this is a long process and to really give yourself the space and the time to heal. Um, one of the attitudes, I mean, my first teacher was John Kabat-Zinn. He's attributed with bringing mindfulness to the Western Hemisphere. He talks about the 9 attitudes that we can use to cultivate a practice. I wrote my whole book around the 9 attitudes, and the one that comes to mind most today for everyone is non-striving, because I think so many times we just want to, I've had people say, just get over it, just like move on. And I am so against that. I am so that everybody has to do things in their own time. It's one thing, like it's the beginning of the new year, right? Everybody has this type of goals or whatever, and you might work toward a goal, but when you notice you're striving, that is like when you have a big party and you're praying it's not going to rain. That's not going to help. No matter how much you're really hoping, and whether it's a wedding or a graduation party, we know what that's like when people plan for things and they get wrapped up in it when it's really out of our control. So, to be able to practice some of that non-striving, that if you notice that you're feeling that push to really want to feel like, oh, you should be further along, like in your grief process. No, you are perfect right where you are right now.
Tell us a little bit about the book that you mentioned. I think it's a great
Oh, yes.
resource.
Well, I wrote the book because I would say the majority of my programs, people will give me an hour or 2 hours. It's rarely a half a day because I'm in the corporate world or doing a keynote. They give me an hour. And because there's 9 attitudes, there were actually times I tried to get all the attitudes in there real quick and just to see. And I realized I can't. I mean, that's why I said when the different things that you mentioned, I could easily talk about this for 8 hours. So that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted people to easily learn these 9 attitudes. And it's just an easy little short book. So that they, like mindful eating, mindful cooking, mindful walking, mindful sitting. It's all about paying attention. Somebody said to me recently, I did a program. They said, I don't like meditation. I was like, okay. But it turns out they love to scuba dive.
Mm.
And so I said, well, when you scuba dive, are you writing an email in your head and thinking about like what you have to make for dinner? She said, no. I am noticing the fish. I am 100% present. I said, then that is mindful scuba diving.
Yeah. I love that example. That is such like a user-friendly, like, oh, now I get it. So, all right, so tell our listeners, what is the name of your book? How do you
Oh
get it?
yes, I should. Here. I have the book.
There
It
we
would be
go.
smart of me to share it. Yes.
All right, so
So the name. Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to read the name. You do it. You're the author.
Yeah. So the name of the book is called Perfect Attendance: Being Present for Life.
I love it.
Uh, yeah. And do you want to know the reason behind the title?
We do. Yes, tell us.
When my mom was in the hospital, she was very quiet one day, and she was thinking and thinking and thinking. And I was like, "What is on your mind that you're so focused?" And she said, "Oh, I hadn't had a sick day in all these years, and I just broke my record." And
Oh,
it was like 7 or 8 years exactly. And I was like, "Oh my God." Instead of focusing on her life, right?
yeah.
She was thinking about work in the hospital bed. She was thinking about work. So I did a little PowerPoint. I put it on the wall of her hospital room, and it said, perfect attendance is being present for life, not work. So I was struggling with a name, and I shared it with my family, and my sister, who's a therapist, started crying. I said, okay, that's the name. We're
Nailed
going
it.
with that's it. Perfect attendance, being present for life. That's it. That'll work.
I love it. Now, you have a podcast of a similar title, correct?
I don't have a podcast.
Oh, I thought you did have a podcast. You're just an
I know, I
extraordinary
do
good
not.
guest.
Yes. No, thank you so very much. No, I do not have a podcast, but I want to mention something you mentioned, because I've only done a few of them, and it's something that one day I would like to do more of.
Well,
Maybe this will
apparently,
be
I
the
just
year.
future pulled that for you. So it's going to
Yeah,
be
no,
called
no, no, not
Perfect
the
Attendance.
Yeah, no, it's not the podcast that I'm thinking of. It is the who knows, it seems like, but when you mentioned that the person you initially spoke with that helped you with
Yeah.
mindfulness and mentioned it to you, had said they were on retreats. And I remember, and we're literally going back, uh, in April, it's going to be 26 years. Uh, when I attended my first mindfulness program with John Kabat-Zinn. And he said, you know that feeling like you want to go on retreat, you want to go on vacation, you want to get away from it all, whether it's at the beach or a mountain escape. And we were all like, yeah, yeah, we know what that feeling is. And he said, that's what is within us. And I was like, what? Like I remember thinking, what? But honestly now, I never realized it, but it took me that time when he said every day you really need to get some practice in every day, because the moment you bring this into your life, you're going to realize, the only moment that exists is this one right now.
Yeah.
And everything else goes away.
Yeah. And I remember like my big thing back after my late husband passed was I was a marathon runner at the time he passed. And I was like, I know I need to keep that habit up. That is my one time. Like that was it. Like that was my time where I thought about nothing else but the running and the breathing and the pace and the moment. Now, yes, when you're on mile 17, your head will fly. You'll be like, ooh, and the pickup and the lunches and the whole bit. Sure. But to be able to be like, I am running foot in front of foot at this moment, like that's it.
Mhm.
And I love that you share that like example too of the scuba diver. And I'm going back to it, and it's just so good. Um, and I know for so many, and I talked about that example of like, all right, so busy in year one and year two, and I thank you so much for saying, oh no, it's a long journey, right? And we don't get over grief, we live with it, and we mature through it, and we grow with it. Like that's it. Like
Mhm.
it changes us as a person day by day, right? Dude, don't forget about it. You can go right back there in seconds, right?
Mhm.
But where can we in the day find the joy? Where can we find, and this is the term my girlfriend helped me with, was the next best minute. Like right here
Mhm.
now. Where's your next best minute? And I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Where do you think would be the best place for someone who's like, hey, they seem to really like this mindfulness thing, right? And my life is crazy. How do they learn? You have your book. That's a great resource. What else are
Mhm.
some really good resources for widows and widowers out there that might be
Mhm.
even just trying to find it in the middle, might find it, practice mindfulness in the middle of their day, in the middle of their parenting,
Right.
middle of their drive? How can they
Yeah.
learn more?
Yeah. So that's one of the things I got on Substack as a writer. And it is a really wonderful thing that if you want to learn about it, it's free to read various different things. And then they have a little thing that they put behind a paywall where if you pay like $50 a year, I think, not a month or a day or a week, I think it's a year, you get access to different things. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to be teaching this much more frequently, live, exactly with what you were saying. So I was thinking of actually starting my own book club, to go through my book in small little increments so that it would be like 4 or 6 weeks. So that if people were interested, they can email me and you can put my contact information up there. So that if they want to know when I'll be running a program, we'll be doing it like I'm going to probably be doing it via Zoom because I think that's the easiest, unless you want me to come into your company or wherever it is that you are. But for the individual person who wants to learn more about this, like the formal practice, like there will always be a formal practice, like a sitting meditation or a body scan. But I think it's very important for people to realize that they can learn this right now. Like every single time for the rest of today, as you are going about your day, every time you transition, I'm going to invite you to just pause. Just place a little pause. And in that moment, notice, we call it the triangle of awareness. What's going on in your mood, your thoughts, and your body? And not judging it, but just noticing it. A colleague of mine called me before I was getting on a very important meeting, and I put this story. I'm not sure if I put it in the book. I might have. I'm not sure. Uh, now that it's been a couple of years, I don't
It
even
could be
know
book
all the
two
stories I
or
put
your new
in there.
podcast. So there
But
you go.
she literally sent me a text, and she said, "I have to go to an important meeting, and I'm so afraid of driving there. My hands are shaking." And I didn't even have time to text her back. So I called her and I said, "Go wash your hands." And she's like, "What?" I said, "Go wash your hands. It'll immediately ground you and use all of your senses."
Mm.
right? So I then jumped on my Zoom, and after I got off my call, I saw the text she had sent me where she was fine and having lunch at the business meeting. And the key thing about that, which is why I share that story, is because it was a beautiful sunny spring day. It wasn't February and icy. And I didn't ask her about the story. And to this day, I have no idea what the story was that she was telling herself.
Mm.
But there obviously was something going on from her past that was making her afraid in the present moment. And that's why I wanted her to ground herself. So I thought if you wash your hands and use all of your senses without judging it, so you notice how the soap feels, right? How it smells, you hear the water. If you notice you're looking at your hands and going, oh, my hands look old, or this looks that, just letting go of any judgment that you notice, but using all of your senses. There's actually research on this that it'll decrease your stress. And another one of those attitudes that we cultivate with the mindfulness practice, and you touched on it just a moment ago, is gratitude. So that the way you can bring gratitude into your day, every single day, every time you wash your hands, which we do multiple times a day, there are over 1 billion, as in with a B, there are over 1 billion people in the world without access to clean, safe water. So not only are you decreasing your stress, but this is also a gratitude practice for how lucky we are to have clean, fresh water, to even wash our hands and our bodies with.
I love that you bring that up. So, outside of your own personal resources, who do you follow when you're thinking about mindfulness practices? Or is there somewhere that you're out on YouTube or a podcast you listen to? There are a few more uh, resources for beginners. Let's put it out there.
Yeah, so my favorite is always going to be John Kabat-Zinn. Always,
Could you spell that for
100%.
the listeners that are in their car right now
Yes,
about to add it to
yes.
Audible?
I know his book's behind me on the shelf. His first name is John, Jon, and it's Cabot, Kabit-Zinn, John Kabat-Zinn.
Got
So, yeah, so I would highly recommend. He has a master class on that app. He has many, many, probably hundreds, if not thousands of YouTube videos out there. I guess I should also mention my YouTube channel,
it.
in that I was going to say a few years ago, I did a 30 or 31 days of mindfulness beginning in December to get through the holiday season.
Oh,
So all of
2026
those
goal.
yeah, yeah. So all of those practices are up there on my YouTube channel. I was going to re-release them, but I was like, they're already out there. I didn't have
Yeah.
to re-record them or put it out there. If you have any interest in learning, the practice. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
for our
think there's
listeners who
a
just came through the holiday season, I know that's going to be on their bucket list for next year. So well done.
yes, definitely.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
But it's easy. I mean, it's totally easy. I mean, it's up to you if you would like me to even do like a 2-minute quick sitting meditation for your listeners.
Well, most of my listeners will probably be driving while they're listening to this. So thank you
Okay.
for offering that.
Okay.
Um,
Excellent.
but I know too, you have so many resources on your website. So go ahead and share with us what the website is. We'll make sure that we have that in the links for everybody to get in touch.
Yes, definitely. And if they are listening, to really have them paying attention, because there's a very famous mindfulness teacher who says every single time you come to a red light, it is a perfect time for you to be like, here I am sitting in a red light.
I love
Noticing
that.
what that
It's our
feels
red
like.
light meditation. It's
Yes,
safe to
it
do while
is. It really
driving.
is. I know. Because there's so many quick and easy ways to immediately implement this into your day today. Not a week from now. It's about today. The only day that exists is today, so we're focusing on today. My website is easy. It's my name. It's harrietstein.com. So
Well done.
it's very easy to contact me through there.
Oh, Harry, what words of wisdom do you have for our listeners out there?
Well, John always says that if you are alive, there is more right with you than wrong with you. And I think that we always are, once again, because you're going to see that a lot right now as we've moved into this new year, how to be a better you. And I'm the opposite. Okay, I'm saying right now that you are really good right now, and to just realize that mindfulness is not about being happy. So when I hear that, I start judging. Mindfulness is about being authentic. It is about being authentic, being the real you. And I think that, yes, all of us want to eat healthier and exercise more and, save more. I mean, we all have the same list. But the bottom line is, it's really taking care of ourselves. We cannot take care of anyone else in this world until we make ourselves a priority. And so I really invite all your listeners to just take the time to have that space for themselves today, even if it's 60 seconds at a red light, to really make that time for themselves.
Oh, Harriet, thank you. That was a beautiful way to end the podcast. I appreciate it. All right, Harriet, thank you so much. All of your contact information will be there for listeners when they're done driving to go ahead, click, and get connected
Mhm.
to you. And thank you so much for just sharing a little bit in 2026 about how mindfulness can help our community. Much appreciated.
Thank you.